Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in to Moms for America, Utah. Today, we're going to talk to my friend, Sven Sharpen, who is an expert by birth in the subjects that we're talking about, that expert. So, today, we're going to talk to Sven, and we're going to talk about kind of that touchy subject on why it is that autistic children, many would say, are some of the most vulnerable, are targeted for some of today's social ills. So, welcome, Sven.
Yeah, it's good to see you, Carrie.
What was your life like when you were diagnosed? You were 2 years old when you were diagnosed with autism.
Yeah, not even that. Like it was 2 months before I turned 2 years old.
Okay. And what do you remember, if anything?
Well, I mean, the earliest I can remember is like '07, '06, '07, '08. But I do remember having to go through some kind of early intervention during those first years prior to kindergarten. And in some cases, it was even like both regular school and sped school at the same time. And it was like, what the heck is this? I remember disliking it even then. So even as a 4-year-old.
And what did you
And then
dislike?
Well, the fact that it took so much away from really crucial childhood development, actually, because when you're at home, you usually learn a lot of stuff through your toys or through your socialization, through maybe some of the shows you watch. At least that's what it was back then. I don't know about today, but there was no like real social media at the time, so there weren't even any iPhones. I mean, they might have existed, but pretty much nobody had them. My family didn't get one until I was like 8 or 9, so yeah, that's what I'm doing at this. But yeah, so once I got into kindergarten, they sort of forced this. They probably wouldn't have accepted me again. I don't know that for sure because this was such a long time ago. But I do remember having to have some kind of program if I wanted to go to this school, this Christian school that I was put to in kindergarten. And even though kindergarten itself was just absolutely awful, but in this case, it was more of a probably less they were hell bent on putting me down, more they didn't know what the heck they were doing. But that's based on personal experience. I don't know that for sure, but that's
I
what
don't
it
know what
seems
that's
like.
like
Especially,
for other people.
yeah, I mean, they don't really know what they're doing. The whole education system is a failure. So, and then I was put in public school starting in first grade, and I do remember they then tried to put me through a ton of like infantile programs, even though I was way too old for that by that point. And my mom did a pretty good job at keeping me out of it. So that was good. So I mean, elementary school, I mean, at the time it felt like horrible, but I mean that's nothing compared to what they would do in middle school. Like in middle school, they not only mandate this program, like, what am I saying? Special needs, affective needs, that's what it's called. It's part of the special needs industry. And schools actually get more funding. I have known this for a while now. Schools will get more funding if they put more kids in special education. So I've heard this that kids will be falsely labeled as neurodivergent or even severely disabled for the sake of schools getting more funding. So I've heard some of that, and that's definitely playing a role in the whole autism epidemic that everyone talks about.
Right.
Yeah.
I definitely saw something like that when my son, who's an only child, was in school, a younger, more progressive teacher just
Mm.
slipped in that he was quote unquote neurodivergent. And he's not. He's simply a kid who is an only child and he has a really vivid imagination. But because
That's
of
like,
that, it was like fishing. It was trying to find a reason why you could potentially put him in. And I've also talked to some school psychiatrists who have said that that is their job. Their job is to literally fish and to look for kids who can bring them more income.
yeah, it's all about money. And what's even crazier is it's also a communal one size fits all system. And you're automatically assumed, like with no examination whatsoever, you're automatically assumed that you're going to have a severe disability, that you're never going to be able to do anything for yourself, that you're always going to be like hyperactive and aggressive. So there's all these policies in place to in sort of infantilization. Like I personally remember being given preschool and kindergarten level assignments in fifth and sixth grade respectively. I mean, this was about 11 months apart, but it happened twice within a year. So that, I mean, even at that time, like I was like, what the heck is this? What are you doing? I'm way too smart for this. Like they gave me ABCs and a kindergarten level spelling test. It's like, are you serious? I've known this for almost my whole life. So, like earlier than most people, actually.
Aren't a lot of people on the spectrum specifically gifted at certain things? Oftentimes academics, oftentimes mathematics and things like that.
Yeah, it could really be anything, to be honest. It could be sports, could be maps, could be, science, or even specific types of science like geology, or maybe like history or something. It could be really anything that can be a special interest. And, I had a lot of different fixations in my case, so I've got a lot of skills, and that would be really useful in the society, but society doesn't see me for that. And I'll definitely get to that later. I was going to say, like, another one of the massive problems, like I mentioned earlier, that kids are being really physically abused. I mean, this kind of stuff is illegal to do to non-autistic kids, but when you sit on kids, when you throw objects at them, when you shove them to the ground, when you lock them in a room, force them to move schools, and make up lies about them. I've had this happen to me a few times. I've had lies made up about me. Um, yeah, like apparently it's not illegal to do that if it's in a special needs program because the narrative is, oh, it's actually protecting others from us and it's like keeping us safe and whatnot, but it's really not. And all you're really doing is just making aggressive behavior worse.
So, how does that feel to know that you are somebody who they feel should be separate from other children?
My whole life, this has pissed me off. My whole life. For the past 15 or more years, I have been frustrated about this. I'm
And,
just like the rest of the kids around me. This is ridiculous. What the heck's going on?
and how old are you now?
I'm 21 now.
You're 21 now.
Yeah.
So, you were separate, but not only were you separated, you recognized that you were being separated.
Yes, I recognized what was going on, even from a very young age.
That couldn't have been good for your mental health, I would think.
I mean, it was hard for my self-esteem, but it was also like, I didn't really blame myself as much as I blamed the school system. And of course, the government responsible for propping it up.
So, where did you get this idea or the understanding that it was the government? Because to draw that link between this is happening to me right now and this is big government, how did you figure that out?
Well, first I realized I learned this when I was like 11 or 12, by the way, that two-thirds of your taxpayer dollars go to schools. I mean, it was like property taxes or income taxes or whatever. I think it was property taxes that two-thirds of that goes to schools. And this was 10 years ago, so it's probably three-fourths now. That's what made me believe, there's definitely a government aspect. Not to mention it's public schools. They're not private schools, they're not charter schools. I know I've heard that private and charter schools have these same problems too. They're just not connected to the big government. But the public schools are.
So, charter
That's why they
schools
call them
are
public schools.
actually, well, charter schools are actually a public school. They're just a separated public school, but they get the same
Oh,
funding. The goal for a charter school is to try different things and see what works. And then for the public school, so they're basically a pilot school for the public school to reapply those things that do work into their schools. That's the goal of a charter school. It doesn't tend to happen. Mostly there's kind of a bitter rivalry between the two, but
I
that is
mean,
originally the goal.
but to somebody like me where SPED is mandatory, it's like they're all one and the same.
Did you ever have
Yeah.
a teacher that inspired you from specifically SPED, and were you ever integrated into regular classrooms?
I mean, in my case, I was actually pretty fortunate. I was in normal classes most of the time, but pretty much everything up until like ninth and 10th grade, I sort of had this what's called an educational assistant to be sort of sitting next to you the entire time. Like it's almost like just 7-5 surveillance. The first ones they pick are usually like the worst of the worst. Like I remember in seventh grade and the first month of eighth grade, and often in sixth grade as well. I just had these horrible, like, we're talking communist, Marxist, almost witch-like people claiming to be educational assistants. And you'd get in trouble for like the tiniest of things, like staring off at a decoration or some sort of poster in the classroom, or even catching them. Like there was this one time I caught the EA marking negative points on me for like literally no reason at all. And the second I said something about it, I was taken straight to the dean's office. And it's like,
Wow.
this is ridiculous. What the heck is going on here? I asked this to myself, and I was 13, but I actually had to fight for a good EA, and my mom helped me out with that too. So for I guess 9 out of the 10 months of eighth grade, I actually had a pretty good person. I remember her name. I won't say it here, but she was much better. I mean, a polar opposite, I could say. She was a lot more accommodating. She was a lot kinder. I mean, it wasn't perfect, obviously, because you're still being watched, but it's not that bad because she was a very kind person. She was a lot more understanding.
So talk to me about that. You said your mother was a strong advocate for you. What is the ideal advocate, in your opinion, if you have an autistic child?
Like the ideal advocate really is your parents. I mean, they'll do a much better job than any existing support group ever could. This is what the AFN, the network that I'm trying to establish, vows to change, is to have more like formal support other than just your parents. Because especially since parental rights, especially in my state of Colorado, have been completely trampled on. Like by right
Yeah.
around 2018 or so, parental rights just didn't matter anymore. And whatever they were doing before that was successful just no longer worked.
Parental rights no longer working. A lot of people have no idea what's going on in Colorado.
Yeah, well, like just earlier this year, it was like a couple months ago, they signed this horrible bill. I mean, it's so bad that even Gavin Newsom would have vetoed it, but because he signed a bill, the HB 1312 that I testified against. You can watch that video if you want. And like it's on my X, and you can find it on Sidewalk Steve as well. He's good. But
Okay.
it's a bill that would essentially take your children away from you if you don't allow them to go through trans procedures. And you are also like going to be fined what, like $55,000 or something if you do not affirm the lies. Like if you quote unquote misgender or quote unquote dead name somebody who's trans identified, they come after you. And that's controlled speech. It's a Marxist ideology.
So I was interviewing a woman at a college who specialized in diversity, equity, and inclusion. That was her thing. And when I said that I felt that the um, autistic community is often targeted, she turned off our interview because it was extremely offensive to her. And I didn't mean for anything to be offensive, but that is what I've seen. I've seen over and over, especially, and I'm trying to be as respectful as I can here, but I want to know, um, so many of the people who are transitioning and becoming violent seem to be on the spectrum. Is that accurate or no?
In a way, yeah. I mean, I've seen a lot of like first of all, I mean, when you're autistic, your emotions will be more intense anyway. So even as adults, we tend to have meltdowns where we can lose control. And
To
but
me, though, this sounds like a typical 21-year-old today. There's a lot of,
yeah,
I mean, honestly, it wasn't 21. When I was 21, we were a full-fledged adult living on our own, right? But um, I think that today there's a whole lot of people who are not in that place and they've been infantilized. Do you
mhm.
feel that the way that you were educated was an infantilizing education, or do you think that that has more to do with being on the spectrum?
It's probably because of infantilizing education. Being autistic does not. make you infantile. The only way I can see that is if you're diagnosed with autism and actually have a serious disability that makes you nonverbal or something, like where it does make you have the mind of an infant forever. But
Right.
that's not even close to a majority of people on the spectrum. But when it comes to big pharma, that they think that's 100%, not under 30. RFK
Wow.
Jr. himself says that it's under 30. This is one of the biggest things that the left is failing to understand. They're taking his words out of context and trying to use it by saying we're worthless. Like he says we're worthless, and they're trying to move some social justice narrative to try and turn us against him or something. But
And
it's
where
not
does that
working on
come
me.
from? Where does that come from? That because you are autistic, you need social justice? To me, so many of these various groups become Trojan horses, whether it be Black, whether it be
Yeah,
immigrants, whether it be autistic or any kind of special needs. Everybody seems to be used.
yeah,
Is
we're
that,
being used as sort of foot soldiers to push this communist Marxist ideology of, oh, we're marginalized and therefore we want privileges. I am in no way supportive of that.
and you never were?
Nope, never have been. I don't
So,
believe in supremacy.
I have to commend that because there are so many groups of people who don't believe in it until it comes to benefiting their own group. And then when it
Yeah,
comes to benefiting their own group, they will prioritize their own group. And they'll say, but we're
yep.
special. But all this other stuff, it shouldn't happen. America, America first all the way, except for us, except for our group, right? Our own group is special. And I see that a lot in racial groups, especially. So I do commend that, especially with as young as you are, to not feel that way.
Yep.
But I want to just talk about from notes from the when we had our conversation before recording a couple of months ago now.
Mm.
Um, you said that at some point you were taught to hate yourself. Do you remember this?
Oh, I guess I did say something like that. Now, I don't know if I wasn't saying me personally, but oftentimes kids on the spectrum or just neurodivergent children are taught that they are worthless and that they should hate everything about themselves because they're not conforming to what the school system thinks children should conform to.
How are they taught that?
How are they taught that? Well, I mean, it's really like you all an adult, a grown adult who is hailed as an expert has to do is just say everything about you is wrong and you should hate yourself for that. I mean, SEL kind of does that in a way.
Explain that to me from your viewpoint.
Yeah, like so when you are in a sped room, even if they don't say this directly, like they'll still treat you as if there's something wrong with you and you will grow to think there's something wrong. So, I mean, it's definitely an indoctrinative system, even if adults aren't deliberately saying it. It's a sort of system where if you don't conform to what the school thinks you should be, then you're told that because you are this, then you are worthless or that you there's something wrong with you or you're just not worthy and that you should not. I mean, if they're teaching themselves people to hate themselves, I mean, I wouldn't. It's more just a sort of. It's definitely not an accident by any means, but I don't know if teaching was really the right word. It was more indoctrination, and it's also sort of manipulation.
So the people that I know who are SPED teachers are some of the kindest people. I mean, they do a job that I couldn't do. I could not, and I'm not talking about your condition, but I'm not a person who it is my strength um to potty train grown-ups, right? So, and I know those kind of people or people who uh get beaten up in their classrooms. But it
Hmm.
seems to me like that's a very different experience than a student like you would have been. And it seems like
Yeah.
mixing the two together, first off, to me, it seems to me like that would be daycare, not school. And to have to be in a room like that when you are fully capable of, I mean, honestly, I teach in middle school and in high school environments. And there are a lot of kids in my groups that are similar to you. And they're in a regular classroom and they do fine. Have you heard of like Transhausen by proxy?
Oh, I've heard of that. I've seen it.
Okay. I wonder if there's also people who want their kids to be diagnosed when maybe they, I don't know if they shouldn't be is the right word, because again, this is not something that I have my hands deeply into, but I do see people who I'm like, in my opinion, you are making an excuse to not be a parent. Oh, my child, they can't go on a hike because they're autistic. Really?
That's not true. They're making up excuses. That's
And
exactly
it,
what you're saying.
well, and it seems like they want that permission. And then the thing is that they get their kid on an IEP and then and the IEP is to not be held accountable. But the overcorrection, I think, is that restorative justice where absolutely anything goes at any time in the classroom. Have you experienced that? Have you been in classrooms that have been like so crazy that you're just like, what in the world? I don't belong here.
I mean, maybe in elementary school there were some places like that, but often like in the sped room, I often did feel like this is not right. I mean, I wasn't like actually placed with people with severe disabilities because that's actually a different program called severe special needs, which actually has way more availability than affective needs, which is what I was put in. But they're both still
Okay.
special needs industry. They're owned by the
Okay.
same sort of industry. So it's not like I was placed in a room with a bunch of people who can't do anything for themselves. A lot of the other kids in the rooms could do things for themselves and were placed in normal classes too, but they still had a lot of this special needs crap thrown at them.
And would you call it, I mean, this is what it is for African Americans. Would you call it the bigotry of low expectations?
Bigotry of low expectations. You're talking about they don't expect much out of us.
Yes. And they think that in
Um,
doing that, they're helping you.
Pretty much. I think that's exactly. They don't expect anything from us. They probably expect less from us than they would of you.
So oh, for sure. Although I will tell you, growing up in foster care made you automatically considered special needs, and I had to fight to not be part
Oh,
of special needs because just simply being, well, the two things I had against me being Black and a foster kid. But
wait. So you grew up in foster care?
yes, yeah.
Wow. That's awful.
Yeah. Oh, I'm fine. But I mean, I grew up and aged out of the system. So I
Oh, okay.
understand people thinking less of you than you're capable of. And I do think some of
Yeah.
that stuck with me. To today, I
Mhm.
cannot do math. No way
Mhm.
at all. But I think that I think individualized learning is different than what we're told individualized learning is. Like somebody should look at
Yeah.
you and evaluate you as who you are and then give you what you need and nothing else.
At least that's ideal, but that isn't what it is at all. It's
No.
a much more collectivist system. They expect you to behave the same way. And they force things on you that you don't need, that they think you need.
So, for my audience who might not understand the word collectivist, that's like to be put into a box. Because you fit X, you are this, and there's no room for anything else.
Yeah,
So,
there's no flexibility.
no flexibility at all. So when you say, "Hey, I need higher level math here," or "I need higher level reading assignments," they go, "No, you don't." That
Yeah,
would
they
be
they did that. They did that often. I've had this happen a couple of times where I was put in a lower than should have been class simply because either there was like a test that was happening or because they just assumed things. It's like, oh, you're in seventh grade, you're going seventh grade math.
Okay,
So that kind of thing.
I don't know if there's anything else that you want to tell me specifically about academics, but I really want to move into why it is that so many on the spectrum are moving into the trans movement. But if there's anything that you think we really need to cover and hit that you would correct in academics, say that first.
Yeah, well, to fix all of the problems in the schools, and I haven't even got started on the whole I was forced to go to the wrong school at 14 for being autistic. This actually happened to me. And they said my parents were told by these crazy social workers, and I call them the N star ZI school district. You can probably guess what I'm saying, but reasons I'll
Oh,
avoid
yep, yep,
censorship.
yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah, but
Took me a
they,
moment.
yeah, I call them that because like they were forcing me to go to this other school, and my parents were told that I was going to fail without these programs. That's what I've been saying all along. Like, I was told I was going to fail without special needs. And the neighborhood school that all of my friends were going to did not have such a program. Even though I think they had SSN, they didn't have AN. And because AN was mandated for me not having a severe disability, but still apparently needing special needs, even though, quite frankly, I did fine without it. They forced me to go to this other school in a different, more liberal area. And well, this put me in a super deep depression that almost like it included suicidal ideations as well as it almost made me trans. And that's actually why my hair's grown out. It's because I went through an effeminate phase. I never identified as trans, but I went through an effeminate phase through my adolescence. I mean, it wasn't like super girly, but like it was bad enough for me to grow out my hair. And like this
Explain
I
that
was
to me because
depressed.
you said that you went into a more liberal school. So what were you learning there?
Well, I mean, I can't say the academia was any different because let's be honest, it doesn't matter where you are, the school curriculum is going to be the same. And the SPED program was a lot of the same too. But, praise God they didn't label me as trans. But I was
Did they have pride
getting
flags in those
fixated.
schools?
Not yet. It was 2018. This was prior to
Okay,
COVID, so they didn't
right.
quite have
Yep.
that just yet.
Yes.
It wasn't in the schools yet, but it was already well on the internet. And
Okay.
I found the trans stuff on YouTube and watched these crazy videos of males magically turning into female, which is impossible. And I knew full well back then that that was impossible. But,
But you
you
watched the
know,
videos. So
they were
so
just,
it
they were just
so
like comics. They were, it's called
oh,
captions. Sometimes they have text, but trans like content online
I think it's
had made
important
me
because
have,
I see it on Facebook where just a lot of guys will be like, here I am being my wife, right? And that just normalizes it for people.
I was not watching that, thank
Okay.
goodness. It was
Okay.
something else, usually a young guy, single, and
Okay.
then just for some reason turns into a female for whatever reason. Magically.
Okay.
No surgery, no hormones, no puberty blockers, just
Okay.
something stupid. Something out
Okay.
of a cartoon.
Okay.
But that's arguably because it wasn't real is part of my saving grace. And I also I learned pretty quickly about the procedures, at least the surgeries. I didn't learn about I barely heard anything about hormones. I certainly didn't know that puberty blockers existed. But this was at a time where I did have a dislike for puberty, largely because of things like acne and, you know, certain
Right.
responsibilities that I just wasn't ready for just yet. Especially
Right.
since my puberty came a little earlier for a guy. It started at 11 for me, which for a guy
Holy
is a little
cow.
early.
That is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
it definitely didn't help. So yeah, I was like fixated
So
on.
explain that you said you didn't want the responsibilities. So, and I'm just this is the first time I'm ever hearing this, even though I've listened to literally hundreds of, gender through a wider lens, etc. videos. Um, but it came down, and I'm not trying to be offensive, but it came down to just adolescent laziness. Is that
In
right?
a lot of ways, Yeah, probably. I
Huh.
mean, I'm much better now. I learned how to take care of myself, but it did come to adolescent laziness as well as just discomfort. Like I was also uncomfortable with body hair at 12 to 14 years old.
So wait, I want to
So,
break that down a little bit more. So I'm just thinking because we have a large outbreak. I had a father reach out to me just yesterday about having a daughter who now identifies as they them. Um, so if your kids come home, go downstairs, play video games for forever, they don't want to be bothered from playing video games. I know when my son was very little, so I feel comfortable saying this story. Um, and he was obsessed with Thomas the Train. And when he was obsessed
huh.
with Thomas the Train, he didn't want to use the bathroom because he didn't want to leave his trains. And I could see why it would be easier to not have to
Mhm.
do grooming, to let your hair grow, to not, you know, I don't know. I mean, I know there's a lot of boys who don't care to take showers and you have to basically throw them in. But I think
Yeah.
that I know, and maybe I'm going off on a weird tangent, but I'm wondering if that lazy factor plays into why some people are find it appealing to um long hair equals girl. Okay, I'll be a girl if I don't have to stop playing a game. Do you think that's
Um,
possible?
I mean, that's definitely possible. I haven't really seen a great example of that, but it's usually a lot more than just that because I was also dealing with the social isolation that I was just describing earlier. And so
Okay.
that didn't help either. And that combined with puberty being early and learning about trans at 14, I mean, that basically checked off all the boxes, not to mention I'm also on the spectrum. So, I mean, I was like the perfect target for these groups. And like all it would have really taken, I guess I would have had to get a phone earlier than I did. I had to wait till I was 15. So after that horrible school year was pretty much over.
Hmm.
So this was 2019, but I didn't get a phone until then. And I also did not join any like autism support group, which would have sounded like a good idea to me then, but I think arguably not doing that prevented me from going trans, as well as knowing full well a lot that these procedures that are just irreversible, and it's like I would never want to do that to myself because I knew full well that that's how destructive that stuff was. Mainly the surgeries. If I had known that puberty blockers existed, I probably would have been put on them, which usually leads to hormones. I don't
Right.
think I would have gone as far as surgeries, but unless I had been SA'd, maybe then that would have pushed me there. But you know, and I really only came about one decision away from being trans myself because I was asked the question of would you rather wear boys' clothes or girls' clothes? I won't say how that happened. You can probably guess how that happened, but with a few seconds of reluctance, I picked boys' clothes. But I can only imagine what would have happened if I had picked girls' clothes instead. Like I would have certainly been a detransitioner by now.
Wow.
Social transition, usually that kind of thing can lead to social transition. That would have happened pretty quick. And then usually that always leads to hormones, or excuse me, puberty blockers, which then always leads to hormones, like 90 something percent of the time. So, but I don't believe I would have gone as far as the surgeries. But
So, what rhetoric are autistic kids hearing that are pulling them into this?
I mean, it's probably less rhetoric and just more appealing to us. Like it's attractive to us, probably by design. It's sort of this weird. They claim themselves as a community that will accept us no matter what, that will love bomb us, usually in a manipulation, and tell us you're actually struggling with. They sort of frame the autistic experience, lack of socialization. I also Another problem I had is I felt more comfortable hanging out with girls than with boys at that age. I
Mhm.
mean, a lot of that was actually driven by the fact that I was being starved of intimate relationships, and this whole being at the wrong school didn't help. But I was I was I felt more comfortable hanging out with girls, even if they were just friends rather than dates. So that could have been a real problem, but thank goodness it wasn't. It just turned out to be this sort of adolescent thing. Yeah, they frame this, oh, if you're socially isolated, if you feel more comfortable with the other sex, if you're uncomfortable with your puberty, and if you're being quote unquote marginalized, I'm going to refrain from using that term. Instead, I'm going to be saying if you struggle a lot because of government or because of systemic issues, you're trans.
Yeah, it's basically a very, very, very wide net to catch every person. And the reason why is because it's the ideology is queer. Now, queer, as I've said many
Yeah.
times, is not anti or pro gay or pro lesbian or even pro trans. Queer is an ideology that requires that you dismantle capitalism. It's literally communism. And there's tons of people
It's
who don't know that because it's not the first thing that's told to these kids. Nobody is
yeah,
saying, hey, your nice house, you can't live in it.
they demand a sort of like government taking over everything. Obviously, they want to dismantle capitalism. But another big thing about communism is the dismantling of the nuclear family, which is
Yes.
easily their goal. It's less an economic issue and more of a familial one.
But why? Why do they want to dismantle the family? Because the family will put their core unit first, right?
Hmm.
And so then
Yeah,
they won't be obedient to the state. But the state, what does the state always want? Money and power. So it is
yeah,
always about dismantling
it's money.
capitalism. It's just
Yeah,
these are the tools to do it with.
yeah,
I think.
that's what the public school system does. And that's why there's such a huge mistrust between parents and their children and the existing education system. It's just all this horrific failure and it's a communist system. I remember comparing them to North Korea when I was like 12 years old. I
So yeah,
remember
yeah.
at 12 years old watching how North Korea runs their country, and I was like, the schools, this isn't that different from the schools that I'm in, and I called them more corrupt, which turned out to be true. They're very corrupt. Not sure to the level of North Korea, but they're definitely probably not far behind.
I mean, they're definitely doubling down. We, uh, the
Yeah,
country voted and gave a mandate of what they want to see. And watching just, I don't know if you saw just this week, but the NEA had its conference and they flat out said they're going to call Donald Trump's policies fascist. And they're just going to do that. And so
they
I would
always do
definitely,
that.
well, they haven't bluntly said it in a way that can be recorded and put out and go viral all over, right? So beforehand,
Mhm.
it was more hidden. I know that when we were
Yeah,
talking about CRT in schools, people were like, CRT is a college level, it'll never happen. Meanwhile, there are parental teacher parent groups that will say, but what's the big problem if CRT was in our schools? Right. So they were much more subtle before now. And now it's becoming absolutely. I mean, Red for Ed is done by Democratic Socialists, which is just,
yeah,
communism a couple of months beforehand. But I'm really
yeah.
interested in why it is to me, and correct me again if I'm wrong, I have no problem with that. So, like, that's a discussion I'm totally willing to have. Autistic people tend to be more concrete thinkers. You are either
Yeah,
good or you are bad. It is right or it is wrong. There's not a whole lot of room for nuance unless you
yeah,
teach yourself. If you realize, oh, I think very black and white. I need to be more nuanced. You could probably train yourself to be more nuanced.
probably.
But
I've been
overall,
doing that for a while.
yeah, but overall, it tends to be more concrete. So if you are
Hmm.
told someone is a fascist, you don't need any
Yeah,
information. Any information that you hear will go right over your head because in your head, you have been taught and you know you are right. And I mean, what do they call it? Like Trump derangement syndrome, but I think
yeah,
it's on
TDS.
steroids, right? So it's more
Hmm.
like it's on steroids because of that concrete thinking.
Yeah.
Um, and I told you this when we talked before, but I've lived with kind of a, I think kind of a valid fear, at least in my head, it's a valid fear. Um,
Mhm.
when when big politicians said that I was unsafe around kids, and the really what they were saying is that I'm anti-LGBTQIA plus and a danger to the trans movement. And I feel like that's
Yeah.
almost, putting a bounty out on someone because these concrete thinkers are not sitting and watching a video and going, wait a second, she really tries to understand where we're coming from. Instead, it's just,
Yeah.
ooh, dangerous, you
Yeah.
know?
Like you're usually like you're often instructed, like you're told usually by activist groups. At least that's where it began. But also I'm sure now it's all in the school system too. That, people in the sped rooms are told this is what you should think. It's like trans good, anyone who seems to not like it bad, that kind of thing. And
Specifically words like
this
cause you
is,
harm, right? Like specifically words
yeah,
that cause you harm, or they extreme terms like genocide. If somebody doesn't agree with you,
yeah,
they're committing genocide.
yeah. That's what the narrative is, even though it's a complete lie.
How do you reach people? I mean, you are pretty lucky that you had family around you who've been supportive
Hmm.
and been your strongest allies. But how do we reach people who do have the neurodivergent link of that concrete thinking? How do you get past that?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not going to be easy, and it might actually be better to just rally up the ones who have not yet been indoctrinated and manipulated. What I often I'm just now beginning to say this, like our minds and our identities are being controlled by other people, not by ourselves.
Mm.
So, and when I say this, I mean activists, influencers, politicians. They will manipulate neurodivergent minds with they'll use their knowledge of neurodivergence and autism for evil instead of good. And like they know what we struggle with and they know how we function and they use that to try to sort of puppet us into being their foot soldiers, more like slave soldiers, I should say, because like it's like do this or else you are not loved, do that or else you are not loved. And then your activists and influencers online will teach you a lot of this, or I should say indoctrinate a lot of you with this like queer theory, this critical race theory, this SEL nonsense, this idea that the reason you struggle is because you're trans, and then that's what happens when somebody is on the spectrum really loves somebody or thinks they know why they're struggling. Like if it's a certain thing, like if it's trans, they will fixate on that.
The fixate is what makes a person usable.
Yes.
And when I say usable, again, how many times have the the violent school shootings turned out to be neurodivergent kids who end up dead? That's what I mean by usable. And also a
Mm,
lot of Marxism, um, when it first came to America, targeted the Black churches. And when it
mhm.
targeted the Black churches, they saw the people as being dispensable. So they saw the
Yeah.
people as being a lesser class of people and to people that if something happened to them, oh well. And
Yeah. Nothing.
and I feel like that's the same thing here.
Keep going.
No, also because violence is seen as virtuous. That is in a
Right.
lot of Antifa curriculum, maybe not in those very specific words, but that idea that you should disrupt, that violence is
Mhm.
the language of the unheard. Again, if you're telling this to concrete thinkers, people who simply cannot, or it takes an awful lot of effort to be able to see nuance. Instead, you're
Mhm.
thinking about people who They will do what they're trained to do. It's like a soldier.
Hmm.
That's
Yeah.
how I see it.
I said it was probably even worse for us, like especially once we go trans. If we ever realize that we've been lied to, that we've been manipulated, and that we've damaged ourselves beyond repair, and that we want to go get help for that, there's nothing. At least this is what Chloe Cole dealt with 4 years ago when she first detransitioned. When she went to her provider saying, I regret this, I'm devastated, I need you to help. And they just sort of completely disregarded her. They did not have any feelings. They said they had never seen an example of somebody regretting transition before, even though that's a complete lie,
Right, absolutely.
especially now that Chloe has taken a lot of stuff in her own hands. She's like, this is a thousand. At the time, it was 2,000. Now it's like close to 60,000. But at the time, there were 2,000 people on a r/d trans subreddit. And granted, don't Reddit is one of these horrible places where autistic folks are being indoctrinated, but there are some good things on there. But an r/d trans has a lot of stuff going on, and I guess Chloe found that and she was like, shoot, there's a whole community of these people. And so she sort of had to take things in her own hands and start speaking up
You're
about
not allowed
this.
to
Like, this
talk
is a
about them.
massive,
Um,
yeah,
in
but
my own conservative town, I brought up that I literally said, well, I think it's important that we, if we're going to talk about the transitioning movement, that we also talk about those who detransition, and
yeah,
immediately was shut down and blocked, and
yeah.
people had said, you're causing harm even mentioning it. And I just thought,
Well,
no, the people who are sitting in their homes having no support
yeah,
whatsoever,
yeah.
oftentimes foster kids. That's a big
And very,
target. Autistic foster
yeah.
kids, boom. It's
I
a
mean,
very large target.
autistic foster kids. I often use the metaphor of Barbarossa to describe what's happened to us. Like the trans movement saw how much we struggle, and it's like, look at all that juicy real estate and money and votes that we can get. And 10 years ago, there were probably 10 times more autistic people than trans people. And so what happened was they saw this enormous pool that was 10 times bigger than their own that they could exploit for a huge amount of money. 4 million, that's probably what they thought, even though it was probably closer to 6 or 7 million. So it's a huge amount of people for a community of less than 700,000. And
Right.
they sort of saw us like 6 million votes. Think about it. To put that into perspective, Donald Trump won the popular vote in 2024 by 3 million. So
Wow.
getting 6 million votes, think about that. Think of how much power, and if you make a lot of them trans, I'd say they've transed a good couple million. That's if it's
Wow.
$100,000 per kid times 2 million, you've just made yourself $200 billion. Those are huge numbers
Well,
that we're
and
talking about here.
again, back to
And
the analogy of this of the soldier, when you
mhm,
are
yeah,
such a concrete thinker, you don't stop.
mhm,
So a
yeah,
person, one thing that oftentimes happens is one person will make multiple identities for themselves on like social media, right?
mhm,
So you've got one person, but they're actually five people. And if you've got five
yeah,
activists that are nonstop just going after, say, somebody like J.K. Rowling, right? So
yeah.
those kind of things become a real issue and a very valuable resource if you are in the market of manipulating vulnerable people.
Yeah, that's what I mean by extra votes. You not only just made yourself an enormous amount of money, you now have millions of foot soldiers to push your agenda. And because you've manipulated our minds, like I consider it an occupation of mind. Like it's not an occupation of territory, it's not an occupation of space, it's an occupation of mind, where your mind is being manipulated with the promises of love, life, happiness, and friendship and community, as well as, oh, and if somebody else doesn't agree with your new identity, that they hate you and everything about you, even though like none of that's even true. Like
Right.
they say all of these things to manipulate people. And when you hold stuff like that, when you weaponize people's happiness, when you weaponize friendship, I mean, these are basic human rights that sometimes even the worst of the worst get. They still are happy, they still have friends. I mean, Mustache
Yeah.
Man 80 years ago, or I guess a little more than that, he still had friends. He still had a community, even though he was one of the most evil people in history. And yet, those of us who are really kind people, who are just neurodivergent, get like no friendship and no happiness and no community. And so they hold that over us with these. It's like, oh, you actually have to do all of this for us if you want that stuff.
And they promise, I mean, they literally promise a
Hmm.
utopia. Once we get rid of
Yes.
all of these people in your way, which is scary. Think about that. Once
Yeah.
we get rid of anything that's in your way, you will get to live in a utopia. We'll all live in a place
Yeah.
where we're all kind to each other and we're all inclusive and we all belong. All of those
But here's the
words,
thing. Yeah, all of that. That's what they're promising. They're promising utopia, and they say we're going to destroy anyone who gets in the way. But it doesn't turn out because we've already seen this in places like North Korea. We saw it in Russia. We saw it in China. It has failed everywhere it's been tried. And so it's like, well, why don't we use those countries as an example of what not to do
right?
and say, how about we, like, I've been noticing this a lot. People in like these days often more loyal, usually on the left, are more loyal to their group than to the country. I mean, that's basically the
Yes.
gist of it. So they don't like America. They love their group more than the United States. So they want to dismantle basically the United States and establish a collection of colonies or countries for socialists, really, I guess, the World Economic Forum, you could say. Because that's kind of who's perpetuating all of this. And the United Nations, they want control, they want power, they want to own everything. So that's kind of why they sow all of this socialist ideology. And that's especially why they go after autistics. It's because they know we are super vulnerable.
It is really hard to think about that. And I think it'll be hard for people to necessarily believe it. But I think it makes a lot of sense. Like I said, the woman who turned off our interview
Mm,
because she couldn't handle the conversation. And I think it's really important that we have these conversations, and parents, more than anything, it's really, really important that if your kids are on the spectrum, that you are their one person. I think that's important for every child, but autistic kids
yeah,
especially, because they are hunted. That's the only way that I
in a
can
lot of
put it
ways.
is
Hunted.
is yeah, they're
Yeah, like I
sought
was
after. Yes, go ahead.
yeah, I was saying Barbarossa earlier. It's sort of the trans version of Lebensraum. It's not necessarily space. It's they don't want more space. They want more power and they want more resources. I said this earlier. So in a matter of like just 1 year during COVID, the proportion of autistics that was trans went from probably under 5% up to above 30 by by the time the lockdowns eased, like in 2021. So it
Wow.
was it was an insane. And I think we're at about 40 now, maybe more. And ultimately, I wrote a book about this a year ago called Altruism. I haven't published it. I kind of haven't worked on it for a while, like about a year, but I do plan on finishing it eventually at some point. Describes like just based on the name Altruism, it describes like not only a lot of what we're talking about here, but the actual goal of the trans agenda for people who are neurodivergent. And let me just clarify that neurodivergent and autism aren't the same thing. I use neurodivergent a lot because it's not just autistic people, it's actually people with ADHD, OCD, bipolarity. It's a long list. So, but it's mainly autistics. We're the largest subset. So, what they want to do is redefine autism into something that's trans and then mandate. When I say mandate, I mean force every single person diagnosed with autism, probably child and adult, to go through transition whether they want to or not. Like, if you're diagnosed as a kid and refuse, if you're diagnosed with autism, you're also instantly diagnosed with gender dysphoria. I mean, it's not like this yet, but I think that's their goal. And like, if you're a boy going to school and the sped staff asks you to wear girls' clothes and you say no, then you're hateful and transphobic and fascist and racist and all these horrible things. And then they'll like seriously punish you.
You
Like,
know,
think of
so
something much
so at
worse.
first I thought, well, this is kind of going into an imaginary space, but that is true. Cultural competencies is a real thing. Cultural competencies,
Yes.
forcing people to use a certain language, forcing
Yes.
people that there are people who are going to school to be teachers right now, men who are told to wear dresses and paint their nails in order to learn how to be more empathetic. I could definitely see
Oh
that happening
gosh.
in schools in the near future.
And
We're
for
not there
girls,
yet.
like for girls, you'd be forced to. I'm not talking about teachers. I'm talking about kids and also
Right.
potentially even adults in the workplace. I mean, it all sounds unbelievable, but
Right.
we've already seen this forced compliance. Like
Yeah.
trans ideology or the queer cult as a whole is a lot like Islam. It's based on subjugating the infidel and taking them over and forcing them to become you. And if they don't comply, you're abused beyond belief.
That's an interesting one. I'm definitely interested in the conversation between the rainbow and the crescent because I don't
Yeah.
know how the two ideas, I don't know how an idea that is you must accept everything, moral relativism all the way across can go with extreme, an extreme moral code. I don't know how the two things work. That is not a conversation we should get into today, though,
Yeah,
because
that's kind of
yeah,
different.
it's a different
But
conversation.
I mean, we've seen a great awakening in these past few years. It's like there's a lot more awareness of what's going on, especially since there's less than 5 years until their deadline of 2030. Part of me believes they're not going to get it done in time, especially if there's more awareness, if they continue to make it more obvious what they're doing. Like the educational group you mentioned earlier, they outright called Donald Trump a fascist, which isn't surprising to anybody. So I'm actually more cautiously optimistic about these things, but really, I actually don't think this war will be won without people on the spectrum like myself and many others getting involved. It, because I believe we're made by God to be great thinkers and innovators outside the box with concrete, usually common sense thinking. It's like if it's not common sense, it's not interesting. So I think that's what we're made by God to be. And it takes great thinkers to win a war. It takes great thinkers to change society for the better. And it's happened before. Great thinkers, we often think of them as autistic today, even though during their time they were more or less just the smart, sometimes fidgety, maybe they didn't make eye contact person. So, but we need to have a movement for autistic conservatives like me, and that's what I'm starting right now. So, I guess sort of maybe follow Chloe Cole's lead, but I mean, she didn't start a nonprofit or anything, but she got partnered up with a lot of people. So, I'm trying to start up my own organization for people who are autistic or just neurodivergent in general, who are also conservative and haven't yet fallen into this Marxist ideology yet, so we can I guess I'll describe it as pick up the scraps of what's left, form a movement out of it, and just try our best to sort of push them back. And it's not like these autistic kids will be trans forever. In 10 years, they're going to be detransitioners. So, and
They
think
have
of
that
how,
option.
yeah, they always have the option to go out if they can, no matter how far they go. Like Chloe did it, Laura, many of these other detransitioners I've talked to. And, I can count at least six that were born in the same year as me. And I'm actually older than all of them because my birthday's in February. But four of them are autistic. Four of them out of six. So that's more than half.
Right.
So I think there needs to be a real movement for people on the autism spectrum who have been through a lot of the same things I have. We've probably got a seemingly endless amount of stories of horrible sped. I mean, I haven't even seen any whistleblowers about the sped industry yet, even though there's plenty for the trans industry.
Yeah,
So what we
that's
need to
true.
do, and honestly, I mean, the trans industry, the special needs industry, and even big pharma have become more and more reliant on their autistic customers, their forced customers. All we need to do, hopefully, is to take those customers away. I mean, this top-down approach of banning this practice, I mean, that's just going to move it underground because there's still money to be made. If you
Mhm.
take away the customers, it probably won't take away all of them, but it'll take away much of them. If you take away the customers, don't need a degree in business or finance to know this, they're going to be out of business pretty quick. So that's going to
Yeah.
be my approach, is to apply pressure from the bottom by taking out the customers and saying, here's alternative support. The AFN will focus on alternative support and focus on autistic, like real autism awareness, what we struggle with, and reasonable solutions to our struggles. So really banning special needs for one, and offering alternative services throughout schools. And I also plan on having big events, like April 2nd next year is Autism Awareness Day, and I want to have a big event at the state capitol in Denver to where folks like me can share our stories. So that's what I'm going to do,
That's
and I
really
plan on
cool.
having other rallies on April 2nd of the years ahead in places like Times Square, places like Disney World, places like Santa Monica Pier. Maybe you could have one in Salt Lake City. You could have one in Utah if we want. Places like
We do have a
Chicago,
large
Boston.
group. Yeah.
But yeah,
I,
and just AFN chapters at every university so we can have autism support groups at universities. Universities have trans support, but no autism support. That's what I'm going to fix. So
that sounds
yeah,
great.
well, that's part of the plan, and I'll get to work. I pray for it all the time, and I'll do the best I can. Pray to God, and I feel like this is my calling. I mean, I this has been on my mind for many years, even before I learned about all this. So,
Wow.
it's been
That's
great talking to you.
you too, Sven. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
And if people want to follow you, where do they follow you? Follow you?
yeah. If you want to follow me, you can follow me on X, Instagram, and YouTube. I'm also, but yeah, it's at Sven_Sharpen. Make sure you spell it right. And YouTube's actually different. It's just Sven Sharpen, all one word. You can probably look that up. Again, make
Okay.
sure you spell it right. It's Sharpen, starts with SCH and is finished with ARPEN. And Sven, hopefully you know how to spell that. But yeah, if you
All
get that
right.
right, but you could just probably look me up again, make sure you spell Sharpen correctly. But yeah,
Great. Thank
so
you so much. I've really appreciated this conversation.
yeah, thank you very
Okay.
much and have a great day and God bless.
Thank you. You too. Bye bye.